Hi, and welcome to the Debrief. We are right here. We are on the road again. This time we're at the Carolina Liberty Conference. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. We're going to be bringing this weekly wrap-up of Carolina Journal's look at public policy and state politics right to you every single week. This time we're really enjoying some good fellowship and some discussion with folks at the Carolina Liberty Conference talking about school choice, what's going to happen in 2024. So now we're bringing you kind of a wrap-up of what we're learning about what's going to happen. First, we're going to kick it off with Carolina Journal's new poll. You probably know it as the Civitas poll. Lots of great information coming to you throughout the year. It's moving. It's got a new home on carolinajournal.com. So this week, we're really talking about school choice. We've got some really critical questions that are popping up on where North Carolinians stand on some of the most important school choice issues facing our state. Mitch Kokai and I just got the pleasure of presenting that poll to lots of folks here at Carolina Liberty. I'm going to pass you the mic, the talking stick here, and tell me a little bit about what we found out.
I think the main thing that we should know is that in all aspects, school choice is highly supported in North Carolina. You have the Opportunity Scholarship Program, which is ramping up, and that has support from about 2/3 of likely general election voters. And as with most of these polls that have been the Civitas poll and are now the Carolina Journal poll, it is likely general election voters. About 2/3 of them support the Opportunity Scholarship Program, especially once they learn what it is, how much money it is, how it gives parents school choice. There's even higher support for the Education Savings Account, which is the option that says, here's some money. You're going to be able to use this for anything that would help your child educationally. And there's also pretty strong support from general election voters for public charter schools. Although we did find, and maybe we'll get into this, a lot of people weren't really sure about charter schools being public and whether they charge tuition. So that'll be something we might want to get into.
Yeah, I think to Mitch's last point there, some of the semantics around the school choice conversation, opportunity scholarships, ESAs, charter schools, understanding what the definitions really are, can make a difference in what the support levels are when we do some of these polls, because the clearer it becomes that it's attaching either funding to a student or giving parents choices over the education, it seems that the rate of support actually climbs. So within this poll, we saw a lot of the support for school choice, but I thought an interesting wrinkle was they teased out responses from teachers as far as their approval rate of school choice and vouchers and the Opportunity Scholarship Program in general, and then their support for backpack funding attached to the student. And their rate of support for the backpack funding was actually higher than the general population, but teachers supported overall school choice and the charter schools, the private school vouchers at a lower rate. And so I thought that was an interesting distinction between and how they may look at it and attach that support level to whether or not the funding is going to follow the child into the public school or into the charter school or into the private school. So I think there was a little bit to learn there, but overall the support for school choice I think is indicative of the conversation we've been having in North Carolina for the past few years, and a testament to how much kind of brand awareness there is for school choice as an issue.
Sure. That's an important point you make about the word choice, right? Because one of the things we talked about in our discussion was whether you use the word voucher, whether the idea of a scholarship, but also backpack funding. That's a powerful term. And you really see folks saying backpack funding makes sense. That means I'm putting the money for my child's education in their backpack, goes with them. So that is a really good point that you made. One of the things that I really noticed about this poll was there was a question on whether folks would be interested in electing the state Board of Education. So right now, the State Board of Education is Lieutenant Governor, and then, let's see, we have the Lieutenant Governor, and then we have a few others, the Treasurer, and then appointees from the governor. And this question is, would you be interested or would you support a law that made the State Board of Education elected? 64% said yes, and that's powerful. I think it says a lot about where people are and what they want from their government from the State Board of Education.
Is this for you, David?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think to a lot of your points, it seems like it's a mainstream it's seen and supported as a mainstream positive thing by this poll was I believe 40% Democrat, identifying 46% Republican, but you see numbers like 65, 75% for ESAs or vouchers. Just shows that this is something that's not a partisan issue. I think some people will try to make it a partisan issue, but a very significant majority back this idea, and it does matter what language is used. But if you looked at the wording of this, it was very neutrally phrased. As if funding for eligible students $7,200, for them to choose a school. That's very neutral phrasing. You'll see sometimes more left-wing groups will poll the issue and say, do you support giving taxpayer money to religious organizations that are against LGBTQ or something like that? And those obviously have different, but if it's very neutrally phrased, which I believe our poll was, then it's very well supported on that. So
one thing I'd add is just we're here on January 26th. In about a week, applications are going to open for opportunity scholarships for the upcoming school year. And it's also the beginning of this expanded opportunity scholarship program where at least applications are open to all North Carolina families regardless of income. Now there's a set amount of funding in there. Once it's exhausted, it's gone. But there are around 32,000 or so students who are currently receiving an opportunity scholarship. And that's of about maybe 120,000 or so students enrolled in private schools. So already about 1/5 of the students around there who are enrolled in private schools are receiving an opportunity scholarship. I think what we're going to see this year, though, is the demand only increasing, and then also in future years as the funding ramps up for it. I believe after this coming school year, the next school year, the funding is supposed to double. So that's even more chance for families if they want to sign up and send their child to a private school. So,
you want me to touch on that?
Yeah, I want you to touch on that.
So another, moving on from the poll a little bit, but still on education, something I was looking at this week is teacher certifications. There was a Bloomberg columnist, Matthew Iglesias, who looked at, during COVID, they had to, a lot of teachers were gone for sometimes a month at a time, things like that. So they had to have an emergency certification. And now that all that's gone and they can go through the data, they found that they had the exact same test scores, same performance between teachers who had the emergency certification and those who had the typical, traditional teacher certification. And there are other factors, like they said, that actually they had more diversity among the emergency certified. And it also matched up with a Los Angeles study that found the same test scores, the same performance reviews, whether somebody had traditional certification or non-traditional. So I was looking into that a little bit, and just because a lot of the teacher vacancies, something that North Carolina Department of Public Instruction calls teacher vacancies, and they're painting it as a crisis. A lot of people in the unions will paint that as a crisis, but you notice their definition of teacher vacancies is those who aren't appropriately licensed teachers. So in reality, there are teachers in a lot of these classrooms, and they're likely performing. There's nothing to indicate necessarily that they're not as qualified. So I think that's something that maybe the legislature could look at or to consider on education going forward, is that maybe some of the slots that aren't being filled, or it can give districts a little more flexibility on hiring if they don't have to consider only those who have a certain kind of teacher certification.
Sure. Actually, what would that mean, though, for teacher education programs at our universities if we didn't have, this licensure requirement or more folks were allowed to be teaching without them?
I think a lot of people would still, there's a lot of people who go to college and they think, what do I want to be? And then whatever they want to be, they get a degree in that. Even if you weren't necessarily required to, I think a lot of people who wanted to be teachers would. But you'd also have a lot of people who, let's say, they have a lot of experience, working with kids, and they have a chemistry degree. They could be a chemistry teacher. So it opens things up. But yeah, maybe these schools of education, I bet they'd fight it a little bit, because it does kind of cut into the necessity of the programs that they have. But as we see, Senator Mike Lee, not the Utah U.S. Senator, but the state Senator Mike Lee, he had an awards banquet out at one of these, and he got mobbed by a crowd of future teachers that, there's a lot of kind of activism going on there that maybe isn't necessary to have 4 years of that and all the debt that comes along with requiring that. So I think, it could be an inefficiency in the system worth looking at.
Very interesting. All right. All right, great. So one of the other things I noticed in the poll, switching a little bit from school choice to what we can expect in 2024. We have a big election year coming up, of course. One of the things I really noticed is that the generic ballot. So one of the questions that we asked in this poll, you can find it at carolinajournal.com, all the details, crosstabs, our analysis and breakdown. One of the things we asked is, if the election were today, would you vote for the Republican or would you vote for the Democrat? Not sure. So we saw a jump this time over November. So now 64% of respondents said that they would pick up that. Was it 64? What do you think? Yes. 46. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mitch. 46, yeah, big difference. 46% of the respondents said that they would vote for the Republican on the generic ballot. And that is an increase because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it was around 41, 42, 43 right there. So it's about a 3-point jump in those who would pick up who would vote for the Republican on the ballot. So you were seeing a little bit of a move for that. Is there anything else that you've seen, been following a lot of lawsuits, actually, a lot of changes coming for 2024?
Sure. My first comment on that poll, that is a question we ask pretty much every time. We asked it in the Civitas poll. We're going to continue to ask it, I'm sure, month to month in the Carolina Journal poll. And that just gives you a sense of where people are standing in terms of supporting the Republicans or supporting the Democrats. Doesn't give you a ton of information that will be helpful for determining how an election will go because no one votes for generic candidates. They vote for Joe Smith, Sally Jones. They vote for particular people, and those people can shape how people will vote. But it is good to know that people are trending a little bit more toward Republicans if they don't know a whole lot about the particular candidates, and that's useful for Republicans as they're considering how they wage their campaigns in 2024. Do they have to do a whole lot of work about their particular candidates, or can they bank to some extent on the fact that people are leaning a little bit more toward Republicans anyway? Now, lawsuits, yeah, there are a lot of interesting things happening with election-related lawsuits. Probably the biggest things right now are dealing with redistricting. We know that there are 3 different federal lawsuits right now challenging North Carolina's election maps. 2 of them really aren't having an impact right now on the election cycle. Even those people who filed them, the plaintiffs, aren't trying to block anything from happening. They basically say, we don't like the congressional map, we don't like the state house map, we don't like the state senate map, but they've not asked for those maps to be blocked for 2024. So you can basically kind of set those to the side for now. The only thing that really happened on those this week was that the legislative leaders filed some paperwork trying to consolidate those 2 cases because they basically said, look, the people are making these arguments, 2 different suits, they're exact same arguments. Everything that's going to be a fact in this case is going to be a fact in the other case. Let's put them together, save some time. We don't know yet whether that's going to happen. And then the third case is the only one in which the people who filed it are trying to block some state Senate districts from taking effect. And they have asked Judge James Dever, who's based in Raleigh, federal judge, to issue an injunction blocking the map. So far, Judge Dever hasn't bitten on their proposal. They tried to get this done around Thanksgiving weekend. He said no. They tried to get it done around Christmas weekend. He said no. He still hasn't said yet whether he's going to give an injunction. My guess is he won't. They'll appeal to the Fourth Circuit and will be so far into the election schedule that it won't affect the primary that we have scheduled for March 5th with early voting that starts February 15th. And we're more likely to see if anything happens with these suits, it would be after the 2024 cycle plays out.
On those lawsuits, I think it's interesting because they did wait so long to actually file a lot of these lawsuits that I wonder if that's coming back to bite them now. There's strategy in all of these kind of litigation initiatives. So I wonder if they purposely waited that long, if they were never really planning on actually getting in front of the 2024 elections, or if that's just something they did not really anticipate and they would like more cooperation from a judge like Judge Dever, who was not going to do it over Thanksgiving or Christmas for that matter. But on the generic ballot, I think this is a really good finger in the wind for kind of the general top-line mood, especially in a state like North Carolina, where we have the majority of our voting population now moving into the unaffiliated camp. and then you have the Republican and the Democrat registrations actually falling behind. So with all the growth going in the unaffiliated vote, it's very hard to get a sense of like where those people really sit, because just unaffiliated does not necessarily mean fully independent or right in the middle. Much of the time, large swaths of that unaffiliated vote are actually pretty firmly to one side or the other. So this generic poll question can point to how active and enthusiastic they are in looking at the 2024 cycle, and how resonant they are with the overall mood in the country. We've got a lot of very bad approval numbers for President Biden at the top of a Democratic ticket. And so it makes a lot of sense from a national narrative perspective that people are favoring Republicans over the Democrats right now, especially in a big swing state like North Carolina that gets a lot of attention from the national space, and then we give a lot of attention to national issues at the same time.
Very interesting, and I appreciate y'all working with us here. We're right here in the middle of the Carolina Liberty Conference. All kinds of great discussion going on all around us, so it's kind of fun to be doing this play-by-play. One of the things that I thought was interesting, that when we were moving forward, you were just kind of alluded to it. The Right Track, Wrong Track is on this CarolinaJournal.com poll. The right track declined about 5 points just since November. So now only about 28.5% of North Carolinians in this poll felt like we were on the right track. So that's really going to resonate, I think, particularly as we get closer and closer to November. It's important also to note that absentee ballots have become available now. You can go online, go to the North Carolina State Board of Elections website. You can request your absentee ballot. We have the longest period in the country of being able to vote absentee ahead of the election. So it's important that folks get out there and make sure their voice is heard. What are your thoughts on it?
I guess looking at the 2024 race, one that I've been keeping an eye on a little bit is the 6th congressional district. I feel like that primary, there's a lot of races and primaries. Maybe even the general is not going to be very interesting, but that one's interesting because it had been Kathy Manning, a Democrat. It's been redrawn to where a lot of Republicans see an opportunity. If they win the primary, very likely they will be a U.S. congressman. So you see Bo Hines, who had run in the 13th, and last time Trump had endorsed him. Now he's back up. He found a new place to run. He's up in this district, but Trump did not endorse him. He endorsed another young Addison McDowell, he's a kind of a young staffer, I believe, and so Club for Growth went with Hines, and Trump this time goes with Addison McDowell. But then you also have the one who won last time is former Special Forces Christian Castelli. He won the primary when it wasn't as contested. And then Mark Walker, who's been in Congress. And there's even a couple more after that. So it was very interesting to watch, especially they had a debate. And Walker and Castelli both showed up and had a kind of a strong presence there. And a couple of the other lesser-known ones did as well. But Bo Hines and Addison McDowell decided not to show. And last time when Hines ran in the 13th, I was at a debate, and he kind of walked in, he looked around, and then he left because it didn't seem like enough people. So that kind of rubbed people the wrong way, but a Trump endorsement was strong enough to carry him through. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what the different backers, like Club for Growth, which brings in a lot of money, or Trump, which just brings a lot of attention and loyalty from the base, what all that will do. And maybe another one I've been looking at a little bit is just, we're talking a lot about education, is Kathy Truitt, who's been the superintendent of DPI, and she has I believe her name is Michelle Morrow running against her, because some of the base have felt that while Truitt has generally been conservative, maybe she's most of the way there, but she could be stronger maybe in her bully pulpit, or stronger on a couple things. So some of the base seem like they want to try to take her down. Whether or not they'll have a good chance of doing that, I don't know. But
very interesting.
Do you want to pass on?
So just for 2024, obviously we're sitting here in January. It's a long way to November. A lot could happen. I think this year it'll be interesting to see what happens with obviously the economy as a whole, but the inflation question, because a lot of people, there's been talk it's come down from 9% down to like 3% inflation. There's talk of, we've orchestrated a soft landing. Everything's great. I think, though, a lot of families, a lot of individuals aren't necessarily feeling that. So the level of price increases might have come down, but those prices are still elevated. So despite the low unemployment rate and other factors in the economy that might be pretty good, people are still really feeling that pinch in their wallets when they go to buy groceries and other essentials. So, we'll see where that ends up as the year goes along. Again, it's a long way to November, but that's going to, of course, be top of mind for a lot of folks. So.
All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate you guys and your flexibility of doing this right here in the middle of the Carolina Liberty Conference. We've got a lot going on. Great discussion, good fellowship, and really focused on some of the policy issues that we're going to be talking a lot about here in 2024. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you go to carolinajournal.com. We've got, of course, David Larson's column about that teacher licensure issue that we were just talking about, and the latest Carolina Journal poll with all the information that we've shared with you here. Thanks so much for joining us.